with the hashtag #ThisFlag. He kicked off a social media movement that's apparently now become a rallying cry for opponents of President Robert Mugabe, who of course has been in power since 1980, and as well as his ruling ZANU-PF party. Zimbabwe is also in the news as it introduced bond notes. Are these going to replace the Zim dollar, or the dollar, which has been the Zimbabwean currency in effect, the US dollar? Joseph Busher is head of J.M. Busher Investments, and he's also president of the Free Zim Congress, and he joins us now on the show. Joseph, you come in the week and you sit there talking about the JSE and companies on the South African exchange, investment and so on. Different part of you here tonight. So just give us the background. You're from Zimbabwe, but you've obviously been active and thinking a lot about what needs to be done, and you're being an activist now.
Well, I'm a social worker, really. I wouldn't want to call myself an activist. I run an investment bank. Investment company, and I think I want to change the people's lives through financial products. So I'm quite passionate about financial inclusion, because I think a lot of people have been excluded. You know, if people do not have access to financial products, they can't save money, and also they can't get risk products. You know, insurance. Those are the things that guide us and that make us almost equal. So if you are not creating an equitable society, you have to say, you know, how do you design products that basically, you know, promotes financial inclusion in the market? I think that's where I am, you know, from a social perspective, you know, to be conscious of that. That's what separates us, right? Okay. But the most important thing, I think, I mean, we're going to talk about possibly are the things you talk about what's happening in Zimbabwe and basically in the region in general.
Well, what is happening there? I mean, President Mugabe, he was first Prime Minister. The British sorted out what had been a long-running problem of what was Rhodesia, then Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, then Zimbabwe. Finally got proper independence, and Mugabe, at the beginning, seemed very conciliatory, and people said, well, the guy's not the monster we thought, but he did what he wanted to do, but was conciliatory. And it looked as if the Zimbabwe economy, and as a polity, the country was ready to fly. Well educated, legendary for the standard of education, a lot of agriculture, a lot of mining. It just looked all right, and then it started going wrong.
So there was no innovation, there was no new ideas. So remember what happens mainly in most countries, or in Africa at least, you know, people get into position of power or government. When they get there, they've got no ideas about what to do. Okay, so that's where then the innovative minds, the new ways of doing things, and the thinking has to come through. Given the fact that, you know, in Africa, we say we're now catering for a bigger population, but what do you do? So what happens is that in most of these guys, they're not courageous enough to be able to say, we have to take the people along with. Okay, so they start focusing on themselves. So all they do really is perpetuate what they were fighting for, and then you create a new, different elite altogether. You know, so you had obviously the previous elite you accused of segregation and discrimination. The new guys, they continue with the same process, and then they forget the whole country. So the first few years, I think, you know, everybody was just stuck in the euphoria of independence without really understanding that apart from political and territorial independence, you need economic independence. And how to do that was basically, I think, the challenge, which we have seen in most African countries.
So we talk in South Africa about state capture by certain interests. I mean, what President Mugabe has done is captured the state. He is clearly staying as long as he likes. Where is the economy now? The Zim dollar, there was appalling inflation, record inflation. That was then scrapped. The rand and the dollar, the US dollar, are actually the currencies now. Where does the Zimbabwean economy sit now, and what's going to get it going? I mean, the first answer might be when President Mugabe goes, but whoever replaces him, what must they do?
Okay, so the first thing really that goes, obviously, remember we went through a crisis, hyperinflation. So Zimbabwe is a case study where you had inflation at 1 million, prices were changing every single day, and everybody was a trillionaire. You know, this is a country where you needed about 1 billion to buy a loaf of bread. So certainly Zimbabweans don't want to go through that again. So they introduced the multi-currency system, that started after the elections, in 2009. So you could use any currency. Many you had currencies, the US dollars, the rand, and so on. But as the rand weakened, most people started now refusing the tender of the rand as a currency for trading. So they reverted back to the American dollar. But remember, they do not have the capacity to influence the monetary policy because it's not their currency, right? So you've got lots of dollars, American dollars, circulating into the market, and obviously they're drying, but also there isn't any job creation opportunities, and hence the economy basically has been battling. So most of the Zimbabwean population is supported by people in the diaspora, Zimbabweans working outside Zimbabwe, and they remit money back to look after their families and so on.
Tell us about Free Zim, this Free Zim Congress that you have.
Well, I don't think I have that. So let's focus on the bond note. So,
all right.
So now they want to basically focus on this bond note. And if they introduce the bond note again, I just believe that this again will knock the confidence in terms of what was restored in the market. And Zimbabweans become nervous again about the introduction of what they can call a Zim dollar, because what's a bond note really? So they're saying it's going to be par to the US dollar, and they're going to start printing them again, purely because people have been queuing again. But I think the bigger challenge in Zimbabwe, as you put it in the beginning, okay, if and when ZANU-PF is defeated at the polls, okay, does the next government have the ideas in terms of how to turn around the economy? I think that's where the challenge is. So Zimbabwe's infrastructure is pretty much intact. So it will take possibly about 2 years to get it going again. I don't think it's going to be very long. The population is very disciplined, so there's no culture of property destruction and so on. But I think it can only change if ZANU-PF is totally defeated at the polls, because if they continue, it's a system really. This is not about President Mugabe. The entire system needs change. And
is that possible though? And we know that the last election there was doubt about, there've been doubt about several elections, so is it possible to have a free and fair election that would eject ZANU-PF?
Well, you need a motivational, inspirational leader. I just believe that in Zimbabwe, what we've lacked up to date is a leader who can motivate both the young and the old, okay, to say this is your country, this is your future. This is what we have to do to be able to move forward. I also believe, given obviously the implosion of ZANU-PF into factions now, even if they don't want to believe that the different camps within ZANU-PF, in 2018 they won't win. There's no way, a country that is so young would vote for somebody who's 95 in 2018. That would be bizarre. I think the whole world will laugh at Zimbabweans to say, well, how do you get a 95-year-old to be president in 2018?
Well, you look at him, the way he's going, go on to be 110.
No, certainly he can get into 110, but remember the brain cells are also dying, which is natural. And that as you get older, you don't have as much energy as you have when you are young. So what we need in Zimbabwe is progressive leadership, new ideas, new ways of doing things.
Where are they going to come from?
Well, they are there. I mean, I know. I will tell you.
You're working with them?
Well, I will tell you. No. I mean, I do know lots of people, but certainly in 2018, I don't believe ZANU-PF will win.
So is it going to be an existing party that ejects it? Is there going to be a new party?
I think there has to be birth of a new party, new leadership. There's been too much recycling of leaders. Let me give you an example. If you go into soccer and you then think of the old Manchester United, the glory days, okay, and then you say, we want Ryan Giggs, we want Erin Cantona, David Beckham. Today they can't do the same they used to do 10, 20 years ago. So you got to have a new team. So our view is that there's no way, unless if you really change everything, you're going to recycle people who have been in politics, who have been ministers or MPs, and they have failed to change. So certainly you need a new team altogether. So I think a new team is going to emerge. I'm pretty much confident about that. And I believe that Zimbabweans will be ready to usher a new beginning. So we're looking at 1980, right? Okay, when Bob Marley came to celebrate, and Zimbabwe was the talk and the hub and the breadbasket of Africa. So I think there has to be a new beginning in 2018. So this will be 2 decades or more than 2 decades basically, if that continues. So 2000 to 2010, massive hardship. Then the introduction of the multi-currency system, a little bit of reprieve. So I don't think they want to repeat that in 2018.
The economy, surely the potential, if it's well managed and corruption is reduced, the potential for the Zimbabwean economy must be enormous. As an investor, is this time to buy into certain sectors and companies in Zimbabwe?
So Zimbabwe is like land, right? So you buy and hold. Okay, so Zimbabwe now, if you go, you could do buy and hold and enter into it. So we have about 60 minerals, proved minerals, in Zimbabwe, of which I think it's only 28 that are being mined right now. Okay, the reserves, I understand, is worth about $2 trillion, okay, of unexploited natural resources in Zimbabwe. You saw that obviously platinum, they're expecting that they could double production to about 900,000 ounces per year in 2020. That is if they get investments within the platinum industry. So there's massive potential. Agriculture, we've got fertile lands, possibly about at least 60% of Zimbabwe, very arable. And we've got 1 billion people in China, we've got 1 billion people in India. And we could be saying this is a target market for agricultural produce. So certainly, the economy is not as complex, okay? But there's an opportunity,
big opportunity
to basically diversify and basically make sure that it's a complex economy.
We'll have to stop there, unfortunately. Thanks to Joseph Busher in a rather different capacity this evening, President of the Free Zim Congress.